The gunshot that shattered the window of the boarding house in Abilene, Kansas, was meant for her, and Eleanor Montgomery knew she had perhaps 5 minutes before her husband's men kicked down the door to finish what they started. Her hands trembled as she stuffed a few belongings into a worn carpet bag, the sounds of angry voices rising from the street below. 3 years of marriage to Vincent Montgomery had taught her that his reach extended far beyond the stone walls of their Boston mansion, that his cruelty knew no boundaries, and that his pride would never allow her to simply disappear. She had tried leaving twice before. The first time, he had found her in Philadelphia within a week, dragging her back with bruises hidden beneath her sleeves and threats whispered against her ear. The second time, she had made it as far as St. Louis before his hired men cornered her in a railway station, their grips iron-tight as they escorted her home like a prisoner. This time, Eleanor had planned more carefully. She had sold her mother's pearl necklace, the only thing of value Vincent had allowed her to keep, and bought passage west under an assumed name. She had made it to Abilene, intending to continue further into the territories where a woman might lose herself among the rough settlements and sprawling ranches. But Vincent's network of associates and corrupt lawmen stretched even here, to this dusty cattle town in the heart of Kansas Territory in the summer of 1872. Eleanor grabbed her bag and fled through the back door of the boarding house, her boots hitting the packed dirt of the alley as more shouts erupted behind her. The late afternoon sun blazed overhead, turning the wooden buildings golden and casting long shadows across the rutted streets. She ran without direction, knowing only that she had to put distance between herself and the men who hunted her. Her corset constricted her breathing, her skirts tangled around her legs, but fear drove her forward through the maze of back alleys and livestock pens that comprised the rougher edges of town. The cattle yard stretched before her, a confusion of wooden fences and bellowing longhorns, the air thick with dust and the smell of animals. Eleanor ducked between the rails of a fence, ignoring the startled looks of cowboys and drovers as she ran past. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred with tears of frustration and terror. Behind her, she heard the pounding of boots, the angry shouts growing closer. She stumbled, her heel catching in the hem of her dress, and nearly fell. A strong hand caught her arm, steadying her, and Eleanor's first instinct was to wrench away, to scream. But the voice that spoke was different from the harsh tones of her pursuers, low and calm despite the chaos. "Easy now, miss. You keep running blind like that, you will break your neck." Eleanor looked up into a pair of steady gray eyes set in a sun-weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The man who held her arm wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, dust covering his worn denim trousers and leather vest. He was perhaps 28 or 30, with dark hair that needed cutting and a few days' worth of stubble on his jaw. But it was his eyes that held her, something solid and reliable in them that made her want to trust him even as every instinct screamed that she could trust no one. "Please," she gasped, glancing back over her shoulder. "Please, I need to hide. There are men following me." The cowboy followed her gaze, his expression sharpening as he spotted the 3 figures pushing through the crowds near the cattle pens. His jaw tightened, and he made a decision in the span of a heartbeat. "This way," he said, guiding her quickly toward a large barn at the edge of the yards. "Stay close and keep your head down." Eleanor didn't argue. She let him lead her into the dim interior of the barn, past stalls of horses and stacked hay bales to a small tack room in the back. He opened a wooden chest and began pulling out coils of rope and riding equipment, creating a space. "Get in," he said quietly. "Don't make a sound, no matter what you hear." Eleanor hesitated only a moment before climbing into the chest. It was cramped and smelled of leather and horse, but she curled herself small and watched as the cowboy carefully arranged the ropes over her, then closed the lid, leaving it just barely cracked for air. His footsteps retreated, and she heard him moving around the barn, the normal sounds of someone tending to horses. Minutes passed. Eleanor's heart hammered so hard she feared it might give her away. Then she heard new voices, harsh and demanding. "You see a woman come through here." Dark hair, blue dress, scared looking. The cowboy's voice came, unhurried and unimpressed. "I have been in here the past hour mending tack, have not seen anyone matching that description. You mind if we take a look around? I mind plenty, but I reckon that will not stop you." There was an edge to the cowboy's tone now, something dangerous beneath the casual drawl. "Make it quick. You are spooking my horses." Eleanor held her breath as footsteps moved through the barn, boots scuffing on the floor uncomfortably close to her hiding place. She heard the creak of stall doors opening, the rustle of hay being moved. One of the men kicked something that clattered across the floor. "Careful with that bridle," the cowboy said, his voice hard now. "That is expensive equipment you are mistreating." "We are looking for someone important," one of the men growled. "Wife of a very wealthy man who pays well for results." "Then I suggest you look somewhere else. As I said, I have not seen her." More tense silence than the sound of boots retreating. "If you do see her, there is money in it." "Good money?" "I will keep that in mind." The voices faded. Eleanor waited in the darkness of the chest, barely breathing until she heard the barn door close. Still, she did not move until the lid lifted and she saw the cowboy's face looking down at her. "They are gone," he said simply. "But they will be back, searching every building in town. You cannot stay here." Eleanor climbed out awkwardly, her legs stiff from being cramped. "Thank you," she whispered. "You did not have to help me." "No, I did not." He studied her face for a long moment. "But I know the look of someone running from something bad, and I know the type of men doing the chasing." He paused. "They said you are someone's wife." Eleanor's hands clenched on the fabric of her skirt. "I am, or I was. I do not know any more." She met his eyes, seeing no judgment there, only questions. "My husband is a cruel man, a dangerous man. He will never stop looking for me." The cowboy was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I have a ranch about 2 days' ride west of here. It is remote, hard country. But it is mine, and no one tells me what to do on my own land." He held out his hand. "Name is James Thornton. My friends call me Thorn." Eleanor looked at his outstretched hand, this lifeline being offered by a stranger. She had been running for so long, always alone, always afraid. The idea of running toward something instead of away from everything was so foreign it made her dizzy. "Eleanor," she said softly, placing her hand in his. His grip was warm and calloused, steady as stone. "Eleanor Montgomery." "Well, Eleanor Montgomery, you have a choice to make. You can keep running the way you have been, and those men will likely catch you within a day or two, or you can stop running from and start running to." He squeezed her hand gently. "Run to me. I cannot promise it will be easy, but I can promise you will be safe." Eleanor looked into his gray eyes and saw something she had not seen in years: honesty. Whatever this cowboy's motivations, they were not the twisted possessiveness of her husband or the cold greed of hired men. He was offering help because he believed it was the right thing to do. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, please." Thorn nodded once, decisive. "Then we need to move fast. Can you ride?" "I used to before my marriage." "Good enough. Wait here." He disappeared for a few minutes, returning with a bundle of clothes. "These belong to my younger brother. He is back east at college now. They will fit you better than a dress for riding." He turned his back courteously while Eleanor changed in the tack room, stripping off the cumbersome dress and corset and pulling on the rough cotton shirt and denim trousers. The freedom of movement was startling, almost intoxicating. "I am ready," she said, and Thorn turned back, his eyes widening slightly before he nodded approval. "You will pass for a ranch hand at a distance. Keep your hair tucked up under this." He handed her a worn hat. "We will leave town separately. I will take the main road west. You follow the creek bed north for about a mile, then cut west. Look for a stand of cottonwoods. I will wait there with a horse for you." Eleanor's stomach clenched with anxiety. What if I cannot find it? What if they see me? Thorn rested his hand briefly on her shoulder and the warmth of it steadied her. "You will find it. You are stronger than you think, Eleanor. You made it this far, did you not? She nodded, swallowing hard. Give me 20 minutes, then go. Follow the creek, I will be waiting. He left, and Eleanor counted the seconds, each one an eternity. When enough time had passed, she slipped out of the barn and made her way to the creek that ran along the northern edge of town. The sun was lower now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She kept to the shadows, moving as quickly as she dared, every sound making her jump. The creek bed was rocky and uneven, but she followed it as Thorn had instructed, leaving Abilene behind with each step. The cottonwoods appeared ahead, their leaves rustling in the evening breeze. Eleanor's breath caught as she saw Thorn standing beside two horses, exactly as he had promised. Relief flooded through her so intensely her knees nearly buckled. You did well, Thorn said, and the simple praise warmed something deep inside her. He handed her the reins of a gentle-looking mare. This is Rosie. She has an easy gait. We will ride through the night to put distance between us and town. Can you manage that? Eleanor looked at the horse, then at Thorn, then back toward the direction of Abilene where men hunted her like an animal. She pulled herself into the saddle, her muscles remembering movements from years ago. I can manage anything, she said, if it means I am finally free. Thorn swung onto his own horse, a sturdy bay gelding. Then let us ride, Eleanor. Run to me, and I will make sure you stay free. They rode west into the gathering darkness, the prairie spreading before them like an ocean of grass. The rhythm of the horse beneath her, the vast open sky above, the solid presence of Thorn riding beside her, all of it felt like awakening from a long nightmare. Eleanor had spent 3 years as a prisoner in gilded cages, and now she was riding into unknown territory with a stranger, and somehow it felt more right than anything had in years. They rode for hours, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Thorn was a man of few words, but his silence was comfortable, not oppressive like Vincent's had been. When he did speak, it was to point out landmarks or to ask if she needed to stop. There was a consideration in his manner that Eleanor found herself drawn to, a respect for her as a person rather than a possession. As the moon rose high and bright, painting the grasslands in silver light, Thorn finally called a halt near a small creek. We will rest here for a few hours, he said, dismounting. The horses need it, and so do you. Eleanor slid from the saddle, her legs shaking with exhaustion. She had not realized how tired she was until she stopped moving. Thorn quickly unsaddled the horses and set them to graze while Eleanor sank down on a flat rock near the water. Here. Thorn handed her a canteen and some strips of dried beef from his saddlebag. It is not much, but it will keep you going. Eleanor drank deeply, the water cool and sweet. The dried beef was tough and salty, but tasted better than any elaborate meal from her husband's table ever had. She watched as Thorn built a small fire, his movements efficient and practiced. When the flames were going, he sat across from her, his face thoughtful in the flickering light. Tell me about this ranch of yours, Eleanor said, breaking the silence. She needed to talk, to focus on something other than the fear that still lurked at the edges of her mind. Thorn looked up, surprised by the question. It is not much, he said. About 500 acres of rough range land. I run cattle, maybe 200 head right now. I have been building it up for the past 5 years since I mustered out of the army. You were a soldier, cavalry scout, saw more of this territory than I ever wanted to. He poked at the fire with a stick. When my service ended, I wanted something that was mine, something I could build with my own hands, so I filed a homestead claim and started working. It sounds lonely, Eleanor said softly. Thorn's smile was rueful. It is. I have 2 hired hands, brothers named Miguel and Carlos. Good men, hard workers, but it is isolated country. Nearest neighbor is 15 miles away. Town is a full day's ride. He looked at her directly. I want you to understand what you are getting into, Eleanor. It is not an easy life. It is hard work from sunup to sundown, rough weather, and long winters. And if your husband is as powerful as those men made him sound, there may be trouble. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. My husband Vincent is very wealthy and very well connected. He has friends in politics and business across the country. He married me because my father owed him money and I was part of the payment of that debt. Her voice was bitter. My father died 6 months after the wedding and I have been alone ever since. Vincent does not love me. He does not even particularly like me, but I am his property and he will not tolerate anyone taking what belongs to him. Thorne's jaw tightened. No one owns another person. That is not marriage. That is imprisonment. Yes, Eleanor whispered. That is exactly what it was. Was, Thorne repeated. Not anymore. On my ranch, you will be free to make your own choices. I am offering you a place to stay, work if you want it, safety. Nothing more unless you choose it. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes at the simple decency in his words. Why are you doing this? You do not know me. Thorne was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. My mother was in a situation similar to yours once, he finally said. My father was a mean drunk who liked to use his fists. She tried to leave him when I was 10 years old, but she had nowhere to go, no one to help. She went back and he killed her 6 months later. His voice was flat, emotionless, but Eleanor could hear the old pain beneath it. I swore then that if I ever had the chance to help someone in that situation, I would, so that is what I am doing. Eleanor's heart ached for the boy he had been, for the loss he had carried. I am sorry, she said. I am so sorry that happened to you, Thorne shrugged. It was a long time ago, but it taught me that sometimes people need help and sometimes you are in a position to give it, so here we are. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them, the prairie night alive with the sounds of insects and distant coyotes. Eleanor felt something loosening in her chest, some tight knot of fear and tension beginning to unravel. She was not safe yet, might never be truly safe as long as Vincent lived, but for the first time in years she felt like she might have a chance. You should sleep, Thorne said eventually. I will keep watch. Eleanor wanted to argue, to say she could share the watch, but exhaustion pulled at her like an undertow. She curled up near the fire, using her carpetbag as a pillow, and let her eyes close. Just before sleep claimed her, she felt something warm settle over her shoulders. Thorne's coat, smelling of leather and horses and safety. When Eleanor woke, the sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern horizon. Thorne was already up, saddling the horses with quick, practiced movements. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, but he smiled when he saw her stirring. Morning, he said. We should get moving. I want to make the ranch by nightfall. They rode through the day, the landscape gradually changing from open prairie to more broken country, with rocky outcroppings and scattered stands of scrub oak. The sun was merciless, and Eleanor was grateful for the hat that shaded her face. Thorne led them along paths that seemed invisible to Eleanor's untrained eye, clearly knowing this country intimately. In the afternoon, they stopped to rest at a small spring bubbling up among some rocks. While the horses drank, Eleanor splashed water on her face and neck, relishing the coolness. When she looked up, she found Thorne watching her with an expression she could not quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing, he said quickly, looking away. Just thinking that you are handling this better than most would. This is hard riding, hard country, but you have not complained once. Eleanor smiled slightly. I have endured worse than saddle sores and sun, Mr. Thornton. This is freedom. I would ride for a week straight if it meant staying free. Thorne, he corrected gently. Just Thorne, and I believe you would. He hesitated, then added, You are stronger than you know, Eleanor. The way he said her name, with a respect and gentleness she had almost forgotten existed, made her heart skip. She looked at this cowboy who had risked trouble to help a stranger, who asked nothing in return, who treated her like a person worthy of consideration. He was nothing like the men she had known in Boston, nothing like her husband with his cruel hands and crueler words. Thorne was solid and real and kind, and Eleanor felt herself drawn to him in a way that both thrilled and frightened her. They rode on, and as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Thorne pointed ahead. There, he said, that is home. Eleanor looked where he indicated and saw a small ranch house nestled in a valley between low hills, with a barn and several outbuildings clustered nearby. It was simple, almost rough, but something about it called to her. This was a place built by honest work, a place where a person could breathe. As they rode closer, two men emerged from the barn, shading their eyes against the sun. They were clearly brothers, both lean and dark-haired, dressed in the practical clothes of ranch hands. The older one's eyes widened when he saw Eleanor. "Boss, you bring back more than supplies from town," he said in accented English, surprise and curiosity in his voice. "Miguel, Carlos, this is Eleanor," Thorne said simply as they dismounted. "She will be staying with us for a while. She needs our help, and I expect you to treat her with respect and keep her presence here quiet." "Understood," the brothers exchanged glances, then both nodded. "See, of course," Miguel said. "Welcome, señorita." "Thank you," Eleanor said, meaning it. Thorne led her to the ranch house, while Miguel and Carlos took care of the horses. The interior was sparse but clean, a single large room that served as kitchen and living space, with two smaller rooms at the back that were clearly bedrooms. Everything was simple wood and practical furnishings, nothing fancy, but Eleanor found it more welcoming than any mansion. "You can have my room," Thorne said, nodding toward one of the doors. "I will bunk with the hands in the barn." "No," Eleanor said quickly. "I cannot displace you from your own home. I can sleep in the barn." Thorne shook his head firmly. "You are a guest and you have been through hell. You get the room, that is final." There was no arguing with the set of his jaw. Eleanor nodded, grateful despite herself. Thorne showed her the small bedroom, which contained a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and little else. But it had a door that closed, a window that looked out over the hills, and most importantly, it was hers for as long as she needed it. "There is a pump out back for washing," Thorne said. "Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Miguel and Carlos eat with me usually, and you are welcome to join us." He paused in the doorway. "Rest, Eleanor, you are safe here." After he left, Eleanor sank onto the bed and let herself simply breathe. She was hundreds of miles from Boston, hundreds of miles from Vincent and his controlled world. She was on a remote ranch in rough country with a man she had known for less than 2 days. And somehow, impossibly, she felt safer than she had in years. The next days fell into a rhythm. Eleanor woke with the sun, drawn from sleep by the sounds of the ranch coming to life. Despite Thorne's insistence that she rest, she found herself unable to sit idle. She began helping with cooking for the men, preparing simple meals from the staples in the kitchen. She mended torn shirts and worn socks, tasks that kept her hands busy and her mind occupied. Thorne and the brothers worked from dawn to dusk, tending cattle, repairing fences, managing the 1,000 details that kept a ranch running. Eleanor watched them from the house, studying the easy camaraderie between the three men, the way Thorne led through example rather than orders. He was a good man, she realized, the kind of man she had not believed existed outside of stories. In the evenings, after supper, Thorne would sit on the porch for a while before retiring to the barn. Eleanor found herself joining him, drawn by the quiet companionship. They talked about small things at first, the weather, the cattle, the beauty of the sunsets that painted the sky in brilliant colors. But gradually, the conversations deepened. "Tell me about Boston," Thorne said one evening, his voice curious. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, choosing her words. "It is a beautiful city, full of culture and sophistication. My father was a merchant, reasonably successful until he made some bad investments. When I was 20, he arranged my marriage to Vincent to settle his debts." She watched the stars appearing in the darkening sky. "I thought marriage would be like the novels I read, full of respect and partnership. I was naive." "You were young and trusting," Thorne corrected gently. "That is not naivety, that is hope." Eleanor looked at him, this rough cowboy with surprising wisdom. "What about you?" "Did you ever think of marrying?" Thorne smiled ruefully. "Out here, there are not many women to think about marrying, and I have been focused on building this ranch, making something of myself. I figured marriage could wait until I had something worth offering. He glanced at her. I am 29 now, not getting any younger, but I never wanted to marry just for convenience or because it was expected. I wanted it to mean something. That is rare, Eleanor said softly. Most people do not think that way, maybe, or maybe they just do not say it out loud. Thorn was quiet for a moment. You know, having you here has made me realize how lonely I have been. Not just the lack of company, but the lack of someone to talk to about things that matter. Miguel and Carlos are good men, but they keep to themselves mostly. It has been nice having these conversations. Eleanor's heart warmed. It has been nice for me too, more than nice. You have given me something I thought I had lost forever. What is that? The feeling that life can be more than survival, that there can be moments of peace and even happiness. She looked at him directly, no longer afraid to let him see the emotion in her eyes. You saved my life, Thorn, not just from Vincent's men, but from the person I was becoming. I was so beaten down, so hopeless. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world. Thorn held her gaze, and Eleanor saw something shift in his expression, a recognition and longing that mirrored her own feelings. For a moment, she thought he might reach for her hand, might close the small distance between them, but he looked away, clearing his throat. You should get some sleep, he said, his voice slightly rough. Tomorrow is wash day and that pump can be stubborn. Eleanor nodded, disappointed but understanding. Whatever was growing between them needed time, needed to develop naturally without the pressure of gratitude or the shadow of her past. She stood, then impulsively touched his shoulder briefly. Good night, Thorn, and thank you. Good night, Eleanor. The days stretched into weeks, and Eleanor settled into ranch life more fully. She learned to work the stubborn pump, to bake bread in the temperamental oven, to recognize the signs of weather changing over the prairie. She began venturing farther from the house, exploring the land around the ranch with a sense of wonder. This vast, open country was so different from the crowded streets and confined spaces of Boston. Here she could see for miles in every direction, could breathe air that tasted of grass and freedom. One afternoon, she walked to the top of a nearby hill and found Thorn there, sitting on a flat rock and surveying his land. He looked up as she approached, smiling in welcome. Mind if I join you? Eleanor asked, please. He shifted to make room on the rock. Eleanor sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching clouds drift across the sky. Finally, Thorn spoke. I come up here sometimes when I need to think. From here you can see almost the whole ranch, everything I have built. It is beautiful, Eleanor said. You should be proud. I am, but lately I have been thinking it feels incomplete somehow. He looked at her, his gray eyes serious. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. Over these past weeks, having you here, I have realized something I did not expect. Eleanor's heart began to race. What is that? I have feelings for you, Thorn said simply. Not because I feel responsible for you or because I want gratitude, but because you are smart and brave and kind, and I look forward to seeing you every morning and talking with you every evening. I look forward to your laugh and the way you hum while you cook, and the questions you ask about the ranch. He took a breath. I am falling in love with you, Eleanor. And I needed you to know that, but I also need you to know I do not expect anything. You are still healing, still finding yourself. I will not pressure you. Eleanor felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were good tears, healing tears. Thorn, I have feelings for you too. I have for a while now, but I was afraid to admit it, even to myself. I thought perhaps it was just gratitude or the situation or the need to feel safe, but it is more than that. She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. When I am with you, I feel like the person I was always meant to be. You see me, really see me, not as property or a burden or anything other than just Eleanor. And I have come to care for you deeply. Thorn's face lit with joy and relief. Eleanor, he breathed, and then he was cupping her face gently in his calloused hands, his touch reverent. May I kiss you? The fact that he asked, that he waited for her consent, made Eleanor love him even more. Yes, she whispered. His kiss was gentle and warm, tasting of coffee and promise. Eleanor leaned into him, feeling safe and cherished and alive. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "I love you," Thorne said, the words simple and true. "I love you too," Eleanor replied, and saying it felt like the most natural thing in the world. They sat together on the hilltop as the afternoon stretched toward evening, making plans and dreams. Thorne spoke of expanding the ranch, of building a bigger house someday. Eleanor talked about the things she wanted to learn, the person she wanted to become now that she had the freedom to choose. Both were careful not to mention the shadow that still hung over them, the threat of Vincent Montgomery and his relentless pursuit. For this moment, they allowed themselves to simply be happy. But reality intruded 3 weeks later on a hot morning in August. Eleanor was in the kitchen, kneading bread dough, when she heard the thunder of hooves. She looked out the window and felt her blood turn to ice. 6 men on horseback were riding up to the ranch house, and leading them was a face she recognized from Boston, one of Vincent's personal guards. Thorne. Eleanor cried, but he was already running from the barn, Miguel and Carlos at his heels. He took one look at the approaching riders and turned to Eleanor. "Get in the cellar," he ordered. "Now. No, I will not hide while you face them alone." "Eleanor, please." His eyes were desperate. "I cannot focus on dealing with them if I am worried about you. Trust me, go." Eleanor wanted to argue, but she saw the wisdom in his words. She hurried to the cellar door in the kitchen floor and climbed down into the cool darkness, leaving the door cracked so she could hear. The riders stopped in front of the house. Eleanor heard footsteps on the porch, then Thorne's voice, hard and unwelcoming. "You are on my land without permission. State your business or leave." "We are looking for a woman," came a cultured voice with a Boston accent. "Eleanor Montgomery. Her husband is very concerned about her welfare and has asked us to locate her and ensure her safe return." "I do not know anyone by that name," Thorne said flatly. "Really? Because we have reports that you were seen in Abilene with a woman matching her description. We tracked you here. Now I can make this easy or I can make this hard. Produce Mrs. Montgomery and we will leave peacefully. Refuse and there will be consequences. Get off my land." Thorne's voice was like iron. "You have no authority here and I have told you I do not know who you are talking about." There was a tense silence, then the sound of a gun being cocked. "I do not think you understand the situation, Cowboy. Vincent Montgomery is a very powerful man. He has connections that reach even into these territories. He can make your life very difficult." "And I do not think you understand the situation," Thorne replied, his voice cold. "I am standing on my own land with my hands on my rifle. You are trespassing. In this territory, I have every right to defend my property. Now you can turn around and leave, or we can find out just how fast I can shoot. Your choice." More silence, thick with tension. Eleanor held her breath, terrified that violence would erupt. Finally, the Boston voice spoke again, angrier now. "This is not over, Mr. Montgomery does not forget, and he does not forgive. We will be back, and next time we will have the law on our side." "Looking forward to it," Thorne said. "Now ride out." Eleanor heard the horses leaving, but she stayed in the cellar until Thorne called down to her. When she climbed out, her legs were shaking. Thorne pulled her into his arms immediately, holding her tight. "They are gone for now," he murmured into her hair. "But they will be back, just like he said. Eleanor, I need you to tell me the truth. How far will your husband go to get you back?" Eleanor pulled back to look at him. "He will not stop, ever. He has the money to hire as many men as he needs, and he has friends who can manipulate the law. He will find a way to make this legal trouble for you, Thorne. He will destroy you if he has to." Her voice broke. "I should leave. I should go before he ruins everything you have built." "No." Thorne's grip tightened. "I am not letting you go. We will find another way." "There is no other way," Eleanor cried, tears streaming down her face. "Do you not understand? He will never let me go. I will be running for the rest of my life, or I will be dragged back to Boston and locked away. Those are my only options." Miguel cleared his throat from the doorway. "Perhaps not the only options, señorita. Both Thorne and Eleanor turned to look at him. The older ranch hand stepped inside, his expression thoughtful. "I could not help but overhear. This man, your husband, he hunts you because you are still legally his wife, yes." "Yes," Eleanor said bitterly. "In the eyes of the law, I am his property." "Then perhaps the solution is to make you no longer his wife," Miguel said. "Divorce is possible, even if it is difficult." "Vincent would never agree to a divorce," Eleanor said. "It would wound his pride and he would never allow that. What if it did not require his agreement?" Thorne said slowly, his mind clearly working. "Eleanor, on what grounds did you leave him? He was cruel to me. He hit me several times, locked me in my room for days, controlled every aspect of my life. That is cruelty and abuse. In some territories, that can be grounds for a divorce without the husband's consent." Thorne looked at Miguel. "Do you know if that is true here in Kansas?" Miguel shrugged. "I am not sure, but there is a judge in Dodge City, Judge Harlan Whitaker. He is known to be fair and to have sympathy for those in difficult situations. Perhaps he could help." Hope flickered in Eleanor's chest, fragile and frightening. "Even if a judge granted a divorce, Vincent might not honor it. He has enough influence to challenge it." "Maybe," Thorne said. "But it would give you legal standing to refuse to return with him, and it would make it much harder for him to use the law against us." He took her hands. "Eleanor, I know it is a risk, but I think it is worth trying, otherwise you will always be looking over your shoulder." Eleanor thought about it, about the possibility of being truly free, not just in her heart but in the eyes of the law. It seemed impossible, too good to be true. But looking at Thorne's steady, determined face, she found herself believing it might actually work. "All right," she said. "Let us try." The next day, Thorne and Eleanor rode to Dodge City, leaving Miguel and Carlos to watch over the ranch. The journey took a full day, and they arrived in the bustling cattle town as evening fell. Dodge City was bigger than Abilene, rougher and wilder, filled with cowboys and gamblers and all manner of rough characters. Eleanor stayed close to Thorne as they made their way to a small hotel. "We will see the judge first thing in the morning," Thorne said as they stood in the hotel lobby. He had secured 2 rooms, proper and respectful despite his feelings for her. "Try to rest, Eleanor. Tomorrow may be difficult." Eleanor nodded, but sleep was impossible when it finally came time to try. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that might go wrong. What if the judge refused to help? What if Vincent had already reached this far west with his influence? What if this was all for nothing? A soft knock on her door made her sit up. "Eleanor." "It is me," came Thorne's voice. She opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, still fully dressed. "I could not sleep," he admitted. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am terrified," Eleanor confessed, "but I am all right." Thorne reached out and took her hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we will face it together. I promise you that. If the judge will not help, we will find another way. We will keep looking until we find a solution. I am not giving up on you, Eleanor, not ever." Eleanor felt strength flowing into her from his touch, from his unwavering support. "I love you," she said. "Whatever happens, I need you to know that you have given me something precious. You have given me hope." "I love you too," Thorne replied. "Now try to get some sleep. You will need your strength tomorrow." Morning came too quickly. Eleanor dressed carefully in the one decent dress she still owned, trying to look respectable for the judge. Thorne wore his cleanest clothes, and together they made their way to the courthouse, a sturdy building on the main street. Judge Harlan Whitaker was an older man with steel-gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through pretense. He listened carefully as Eleanor told her story, leaving out nothing. She spoke of her forced marriage, of Vincent's cruelty and control, of her desperate flight, and the men who hunted her even now. Thorne corroborated her story, offering to testify to the condition he had found her in and the men who had come searching for her. When Eleanor finished, the judge was quiet for a long time, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Finally, he spoke. "Mrs. Montgomery, what you describe is indeed grounds for divorce in this territory based on cruelty and abandonment of marital duties by your husband. However, I must warn you that such a decree may not be honored in all states, particularly back east where your husband has influence." "I understand," Eleanor said. "But at least it would give me legal standing here, would it not? It would make it harder for him to simply take me by force." "It would," the judge agreed. He looked at Thorne. "And you, Mr. Thornton, what is your interest in this matter?" Thorne met the judge's eyes steadily. "I love her, Your Honor. I want to marry her if she will have me once she is free to make that choice. And I want to protect her from a man who sees her as property rather than a person." Judge Whittaker nodded slowly. "I see." He was quiet again, then seemed to come to a decision. "Very well. I will grant the divorce on grounds of cruelty and desertion of marital responsibilities. It will be effective immediately. Mrs. Montgomery, you are free to resume using your maiden name if you wish." Eleanor felt tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." The judge smiled kindly. "You are welcome, child. I have seen too many women trapped in terrible situations by unjust laws. I am glad I can help in this case." He prepared the legal documents, signing and sealing them officially, then handed copies to Eleanor. "Keep these safe. They are your proof of freedom." Walking out of the courthouse, Eleanor felt as if she were floating. The papers in her hand were more than just legal documents. They were a new life, a new beginning. She looked at Thorne, who was grinning broadly, and suddenly she was laughing and crying at the same time. "I am free," she said, the words still feeling unreal. "Thorne, I am actually free." He caught her up in his arms, spinning her around right there on the street, not caring who saw. "You are free," he agreed. When he set her down, his expression turned serious. "Eleanor Grant, now that you are a free woman, I have a question to ask you." Eleanor's heart began to pound. "Yes." Thorne took her hands in his, standing there in the middle of Dodge City's Main Street with people passing by on all sides. "I know we have not known each other long. I know there is still danger ahead and life on the ranch is hard, but I love you and I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" Eleanor felt joy bubbling up inside her, pure and bright and overwhelming. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and certain. "Yes, I will marry you, Thorne. I love you and I want to build a life with you." They found a small church at the edge of town, and the minister there agreed to marry them that very afternoon. It was a simple ceremony with only the minister's wife and a passing cowboy as witnesses, but to Eleanor, it was perfect. She wore her plain dress. Thorne wore his working clothes, and they spoke their vows in voices that shook with emotion and joy. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Thorne kissed Eleanor with all the love and promise in his heart, and she kissed him back with all the hope and happiness in hers. She was Eleanor Thornton now, truly and legally, bound to this good man by choice and love rather than by force and debt. They stayed in Dodge City one more night, this time sharing a room as husband and wife. Thorne was gentle and patient, giving Eleanor time to adjust to intimacy that was based on love rather than on ownership and control. For the first time in her life, Eleanor understood what it meant to be truly joined with another person, to give yourself freely and have that gift treasured. She fell asleep in Thorne's arms, feeling safe and loved and whole. The ride back to the ranch was different from any journey Eleanor had made before. She was not running anymore. She was going home, to a place she had chosen with a man she loved. The prairie seemed more beautiful than ever, the sky more vast, the future more full of possibility. Miguel and Carlos were delighted by the news of the marriage, congratulating them both with genuine warmth. That night, they prepared a special meal in celebration, and the four of them ate together, talking and laughing. Eleanor looked around the simple room at these men who had become her family, at this rough house that had become her home, and felt a contentment she had never known existed. But their happiness was shadowed by the knowledge that Vincent's men might return. Thorne increased security around the ranch, keeping weapons close and having Miguel and Carlos take turns keeping watch at night. Days passed in tense anticipation, but no one came. 2 weeks after their return from Dodge City, a rider arrived at the ranch. Eleanor's heart seized with fear until she recognized the man as a deputy from town, not one of Vincent's hired men. The deputy dismounted and handed Thorne an official-looking envelope. "Legal papers from back east," the deputy explained. "Forwarded through the territorial office, figured you would want them right away." Thorne thanked him and waited until the deputy left before opening the envelope. Eleanor stood beside him, her hand in his, as he read the contents. His expression shifted from tension to surprise to relief. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. Thorne looked at her, a smile spreading across his face. "It is from Vincent Montgomery's lawyer. He is acknowledging the divorce decree and dropping all claims to you." He read further. "Apparently, Vincent has remarried, some young socialite from New York. His lawyer states that he considers the matter of your disappearance closed and has instructed his men to cease their search." Eleanor felt her knees weaken. "He has given up, just like that." "His pride found a new target," Thorne said. "A wife who will enhance his reputation instead of one who fled from him. And perhaps he realized that pursuing you was costing more than it was worth, especially with the divorce decree complicating matters." Eleanor sank into a chair, overwhelmed by relief. "I am truly free then. He is not coming after me anymore. You are truly free," Thorne confirmed, kneeling beside her chair and taking her hands. "You can stop looking over your shoulder, Eleanor. You can just live." The tears came then, tears of relief and release and joy. Thorne held her while she cried, while years of fear and tension finally drained away. When she had no more tears left, Eleanor looked at her husband with clear eyes. "What do we do now?" she asked. Thorne smiled. Now we live. We build our ranch, we build our life, we build our future, together." And that is exactly what they did. The seasons turned, summer fading into fall and then winter. Eleanor threw herself into ranch life, learning new skills and discovering strengths she had not known she possessed. She learned to ride properly, to help with the cattle, to manage the household with efficiency. She started a small garden near the house, coaxing vegetables from the hard prairie soil. She made friends with the few neighboring ranch families, earning their respect with her hard work and genuine warmth. Thorne expanded the ranch gradually, buying more cattle and more land. Miguel and Carlos remained his trusted employees, and over time, they became more like family. The ranch prospered, and with prosperity came the ability to improve. Thorne built a new bunkhouse for the hands, then began work on a bigger house for himself and Eleanor. The new house was not a mansion, nothing like the grand homes of Boston, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. It had a large kitchen with a good stove, a parlor with windows that looked out over the hills, and 2 bedrooms upstairs under the eaves. Thorne built it with his own hands, with help from Miguel and Carlos, and Eleanor watched it rise with a sense of wonder. This was a home being created from love, every nail and board placed with care. They moved into the new house in the spring of 1874, almost 2 years after Eleanor had first arrived at the ranch. That night, lying in their new bedroom with moonlight streaming through the windows, Eleanor turned to Thorne. "I am happy," she said simply. "I did not think I ever would be again, but I am truly happy." Thorne pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "So am I." "You have made this place a real home, Eleanor. You have made my life complete." "You saved me," Eleanor said softly. "You caught my hand when I was running, and you told me to run to you instead. That changed everything." "We saved each other," Thorne replied. "I was alone and lonely, just going through the motions. You gave me purpose and love and a future I actually want to live. We are partners, Eleanor, in everything." That partnership deepened over the months that followed. They worked side by side, making decisions together, building their ranch and their life as a team. When challenges arose, they faced them together. When joys came, they shared them. Their love grew from the passionate intensity of new romance into something deeper and more enduring, a love built on respect and trust and genuine partnership. In the fall of 1874, Eleanor realized she was pregnant. The news filled both her and Thorne with joy and anticipation. Through the winter months, as her belly grew, Thorn became even more protective and attentive, fussing over her in ways that made her laugh. Miguel's wife Maria, from a neighboring ranch, came to help as Eleanor's time drew near, sharing wisdom and experience. Their son was born in the spring of 1875, a healthy baby with dark hair and his father's gray eyes. They named him Thomas, after Thorn's father, who had been a good man before the drink took him. Holding his son for the first time, Thorn wept openly, overwhelmed by the perfection of the tiny life in his arms. "I am going to be a good father," he vowed to Eleanor. "I am going to show him what a man should be. I am going to love him and his mother every day of my life." "I know you will," Eleanor said, tears of happiness on her own cheeks. "You are the best man I have ever known, Thorn. Our son is lucky to have you as his father." Thomas thrived, growing from infant to toddler with his parents' devoted attention. Eleanor had never imagined herself as a mother, had feared what that might mean in a loveless marriage, but with Thorn, motherhood was a joy. She loved watching Thorn with their son, seeing the gentleness and patience he showed, the way he made Thomas laugh with his silly games and quiet jokes. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1876, Thorn ran nearly 1,000 head of cattle and employed 4 hands full-time. He was respected in the region as a fair employer and a skilled rancher. Eleanor became known for her kindness and her hospitality, always welcoming to travelers and neighbors alike. Their home became a gathering place, a spot of warmth and community in the vast prairie. In 1877, Eleanor gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, a beautiful baby with her mother's dark hair and delicate features. Thomas, now 2, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. The family felt complete, their little house full of love and laughter and life. One evening, when Thomas was 4 and Rose was 2, Eleanor and Thorn sat on their porch watching their children play in the yard. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. "You ever think about Boston?" Thorn asked, his arm around Eleanor's shoulders. Eleanor considered the question. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I think about the girl I was, the life I had, but it feels like a lifetime ago, like it happened to someone else. This is my real life, here with you and our children. This is where I belong. Do you ever regret it, giving up that world of culture and refinement for a hard life on a rough ranch?" Eleanor turned to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his question. She cupped his face in her hands. "Thorn Thornton, I have never regretted a single moment of our life together. You gave me something infinitely more valuable than culture and refinement. You gave me freedom and love and a life that is truly mine. You gave me a real home and a real family. How could I ever regret that?" Thorn kissed her, deep and loving, while their children giggled nearby. "I love you, Eleanor. I will love you until the day I die." "And I love you," Eleanor replied, "always and forever." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges as all years do. There were hard winters and dry summers, years when cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were scares with illness and injuries that came with ranch life. But through it all, Eleanor and Thorn faced everything together, their partnership strong and their love unwavering. Thomas grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's quick mind and kind heart. He loved ranch life, eagerly learning everything Thorn could teach him about cattle and horses and the land. Rose was a spirited child, curious and clever, equally at home helping her mother in the house or following her father and brother around the ranch. In 1882, Eleanor and Thorn celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. The ranch was now one of the most successful in the region, spanning over 2,000 acres. The original simple house had been expanded again, with more rooms added as the family grew. Miguel and Carlos were still with them, now managing their own families in houses Thorn had built on ranch land. On the evening of their anniversary, after the children were in bed, Thorn took Eleanor for a ride up to the hilltop where he had first told her he loved her. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light over the prairie that stretched endlessly in all directions. 10 years, Thorne said, his arm around Eleanor's waist as they stood looking at the view. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I found you running in Abilene. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Both, Eleanor said. It is both. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I was running from a life I could not escape, completely lost and terrified. And then you caught my hand and told me to run to you instead. You changed everything, Thorne. You showed me what love really is, what partnership really means. You gave me a life beyond anything I ever dreamed possible. We built it together, Thorne said. Every bit of it we built together. The ranch, our family, our life. It is ours, Eleanor, and I would not change a single thing. They stood together in the moonlight, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful from courage and love. Behind them, their ranch spread across the prairie, a testament to their hard work and dedication. In the house down below, their children slept safely, secure in the love of their parents. And ahead of them stretched years of life together, years full of challenges and joys, sorrows and triumphs, all to be faced hand in hand. Eleanor had stopped running the day Thorne caught her hand. She had found her home, not in a place but in a person, in the solid strength and unwavering love of a cowboy who saw her as she truly was and loved her all the more for it. She was no longer Eleanor Montgomery, trapped and afraid. She was Eleanor Thornton, free and loved and whole. And when she looked at her husband in the moonlight, seeing the love shining in his gray eyes, she knew with absolute certainty that she had finally, truly found where she belonged. She had run to him and he had caught her, and together they had built a life that was theirs alone, a love that would last all their days. The Wild West could be a harsh and unforgiving place, but it could also be a land of second chances and new beginnings. Eleanor had found both, and more than that, she had found love in its truest form. Not the possessive obsession of her first marriage, but a partnership built on respect, trust, and genuine affection. As they rode back down to their ranch house under the stars, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every hardship, every moment of fear, every difficult choice had led her to this moment, to this life, to this man. She would not change any of it, because it had all been necessary to bring her home. Thomas and Rose grew and eventually started families of their own, building homes on Thornton land, and carrying on the legacy their parents had created. The ranch passed from one generation to the next, but always at its heart was the story of how Eleanor had run from a life of captivity and into the arms of a cowboy who loved her enough to give her freedom. It became family legend, told to grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a reminder that love is about liberation, not possession, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust someone enough to stop running. Eleanor lived a long and happy life, surrounded by children and grandchildren, secure in the love of her husband and the family they had created together. When she was old and gray, sitting on the porch with Thorne beside her, she would sometimes think back to that terrified young woman running through the streets of Abilene, and she would smile. That woman had been so lost, so broken, so certain that happiness was impossible. But that woman had been wrong. Happiness was not only possible, it was real and lasting and beautiful. You just had to be brave enough to reach for it when it was offered. You had to be willing to stop running away and start running toward something better. Eleanor Thornton died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72, with Thorne holding her hand just as he had held it through all the years of their marriage. He followed her just 6 months later, unable to imagine life without his beloved partner. They were buried together on the hilltop overlooking their ranch, the place where their love had first been spoken aloud, united in death as they had been in life. Their story lived on in the family they had created, in the ranch that still bore the Thornton name, in the love that had transformed two lives and created something enduring and beautiful. It was a testament to the power of courage, the healing force of love, and the truth that sometimes the best thing you can do is run towards someone who will catch you and never let you fall.